Hello, I stumbled across an article from GameRant, award-winning journalism at its finest, titled Final Fantasy's Most Underused Jobs. Let's see what they had to say, shall we? So here's the article, written by Mark Smith. Here's a picture of Fran of Final Fantasy 12. And then here's a picture of Yuna, Pain, and Riku from Final Fantasy 10-2. It says, less used jobs in Final Fantasy, like the Dark Knight.
Hold up. Wait a minute.
Obviously, don't play the critically acclaimed Final Fantasy XIV with free trial up to level 70 with no restriction on playtime, because Dark Knight's a very popular tank class in 14. So they haven't done much. I don't think they've done much research here. I'm not too surprised. Or Geomancer, offering unique abilities with thematic potential. Chemist, Ranger, and Necromancer jobs rarely seen in the series could add interesting gameplay dynamics if reintroduced. I can see that Necromancer. Yeah, they've been talking about that for some time, especially in 14 anyway. So scholars and gun mages will are underrepresented, bring unique skills and combinations that could add depth to future Final Fantasy games. Again, scholars are in 14, and they have revamped it. For a while, they kind of did a little too much of a touch up on scholars. It wasn't that great, and then the fairies didn't do anything for a while, but then they kind of fixed that. It's better now. I guess they're talking more about this overall Final Fantasy, and I don't know actually I don't know what to talk about, because a lot of people play Scholars too. My co-healer and my Wade plays Scholars, so I don't know. Let's keep going, shall we? I didn't say I would agree with their choices. So part of the appeal of the classic Final Fantasy game is its cast. These characters tend to have diverse personalities, looks, and of course, jobs. Jobs give each character speciality and role in battle. Some of the more recognizable jobs include the warrior, of course, the black mage, and the summoner. With such a long history, Final Fantasy has produced jobs that are a little odd and out of place even for a fantasy world. One, is the brooding Dark Knight. It was first seen in Final Fantasy II. Although the archetype of the edgy, grim Dark Knight gone bad enjoys undying love among fantasy fans, its inclusion in the Final Fantasy series has been somewhat scarce considering its popularity. Again, not really 14. It really popular, especially it came out in Heaven's Ward, this first expansion to the game. And it's been getting a lot popularity ever since, at least in 14. A lot of people play Dark Knight. So Dark Knights tend to appear as anti-heroes optional jobs that job fluid characters can switch to, such as Lightning in Final Fantasy 13 Lightning Returns. Never played it. I played the first two. I played 13 and 13 too, but never played Lightning Returns. Or the Gull Wings in Final Fantasy 10-2. That I did. They had the dress spear. They dressed as Dark Knights. But again, they didn't mention Final Fantasy 14. Again, it's a very popular tank class to play. It's up there with Warrior. A lot of people play Dark Knights. Even Asmongold, I think, was playing Dark Knight when he used to play FF14. So I don't know if this one's an unused job. Maybe if you don't count 14, maybe, I guess, but 14 is still counted as a Final Fantasy game, even though it's MMO. So I don't know if I agree with that. Dark Knights are still thriving. Oh, here's more. Dark Knights sacrifice their own health to deal more damage against foes. Perhaps because Final Fantasy tends to portray their fantasy worlds as bright and optimistic, this type of world would seem out of place if included too often. That being said, the dark world of Final Fantasy 16, Valistia, would probably suit it just fine. True, Dark Knight in 16. I still have to finish 16. I never finished 16. But that I could see that. He kind of is a Dark Knight, the main character. So next one's Nature Communing Geomancer. Okay, so let's see. First seen in Final Fantasy III, Geomancer job sounds like an Earth Elemental Mage, but capabilities reach far beyond simple walk and soil. Geomancers shape and manipulate their terrain at 0 MP cost. In other words, their abilities change depending on where they are in the natural world. This job has plenty of potential as players unearth their unique abilities as the party travels across different landscapes. It is an interesting class. You don't really see Geomancer. I guess it's only in Final Fantasy 3 because it's not in. I don't think it even came in 14. That's just coming into that new Eureka area. But even then, it's only like it'll be like a limited class. But yeah, I guess Geomancer is unused. Don't hear too much Geomancer. It's kind of cool how I use as elemental magic. You always think of Black Mage with the fire and ice and lightning, but not really Earth's magic. And it's kind of cool how they pick the abilities as they travel across different landscapes. Okay, for example, so gamers can speak for the trees or other sort of flora and fauna in these open world games about protecting nature. For example, Geomancer might whip up a dust storm out in the desert or conjure spears of molten rock while traveling across a volcano's rim. Final Fantasy has always had something of an environmental message, and Geomancer would be perfect for exploring themes of natural preservation. I guess so. I don't know if they're trying to put in a climate change thing here, but
And now the weather forecast with Greta Thunberg.
Hot!
That was the weather with Greta Thunberg.
we know that climate change doesn't exist, but it is cool how you can be able to use your environment, the earth, at whatever location, environment, different abilities. So next is the mix and match Chemist, first seen in Final Fantasy Tactics. The Chemist who can combine different items together for unique effects has only been seen in one mainline Final Fantasy title, Final Fantasy V and Tactics. However, the similarly themed, similarly weird Alchemist shares many of the job properties. Final Fantasy X's Riku has its primary ability as an overdrive. That I do remember. I like the overdrive. That saved me a lot at the end when the final boss is combining different things to thwart the boss. An Alchemist, again, is in Final Fantasy 14. That's a crafting class. So implementing a Chemist or Alchemist sounds like a lot of work in creating combination tables. However, since crafting is so popular in modern RPGs, it's not surprising that a job centered around collecting items and experimenting with different recipes for powerful items hasn't seen more use. Of course, it's a learnable disciple of a hand job in FF14, not that type of hand job. Yeah, Alchemist, but it's kind of limited though. You can't fight, and you only can just craft things. You can craft potions and stuff, but not for combat use. So next is the Untamable Ranger or Beastmaster. First team in Final Fantasy 3. Well, Beastmaster, that's coming to 14 eventually as a limited job. Just like Blue Mage, so that'd be interesting to see. So granted, there are a few overlaps between the Ranger job and the Archer, which has enjoyed some representation, although in many cases outside the mainline series. However, the Ranger is more than a bow. The affinity with wild pets and wilderness survival abilities, a speciality that the Beastmaster job shares, is slowly missing in most of the series. I guess I must be talking about, is Fran a Ranger from 12? I know she has a bow. She might be a Ranger. Never finished 12. Rangers or Beastmasters could mechanically behave in a similar way to summoners, bringing all the beasties they've made friends with on their adventures to battle. Being able to tame and improve a pet or wild ally's abilities in battle could be a fun gameplay loop by itself. I think it's also an 11, I think. Was it Beastmaster? I haven't played 11, but I think Beastmaster was an 11. So, I mean, it's not unused. It seems like it has been used. But yeah, it is a cool class. Should be used more, though. Be able to control, be able to capture different monsters and tame them, put them in battle, kind of like Dragon Quest. So the Studious Scholar. First team of Final Fantasy Tactics. Scholar is a job focused on intellect, knowledge, and analysis. In Final Fantasy Tactics, Scholars have a unique ability to study enemy weaknesses and use area effect spells to exploit them. I think in 14 they have an ability like that. They don't really study it, but they have that chain thing. I don't play Scholar much. The ability to read and interpret the battle conditions and enemy weaknesses is a job mechanic that may be niche, but adds a much needed level of strategy. Unfortunately, Scholars are often overshadowed by flashier magic users, such as summoners or black mages. Final Fantasy 14 gave this job a fresh spin by using it as a healing job, uses fairy companions to add to the party. While it's more of an aesthetic nod to the original job, it's still nice to see its inclusion. I mean, it's changed a little bit. It used to have dots. I missed the dots in the 14 Scholar. They took that away. And when the fairy first came out, they used to do macros. You had to have a different bunch of macros you could have, so you could heal. You could do a healing ability and have the fairy heal at the same time, so it like even double the healing power. And then they kind of nerfed the fairy for a while. Not that long ago, they kind of brought the fairy back as more useful again. And now the Scholar can turn into a angel or a Sailor Moon transformation and constantly heal for a burst period of time. But I mean, scholars still get some love in 14. That's what's underused. A lot of scholars in 14. I don't know how many compare to Sage when it comes to shield healers, but a lot of people like the fairy, and you can also glam the fairy to look up as carbuncles now, so it's cool. But for a while, when they nerfed that fairy, scholars were kind of dead in 14. No one was really playing scholar because there wasn't really much to it. Next is a soul-stealing Necromancer, lasting a Final Fantasy V Advance. This job has probably made the most infrequent appearances in a series about light-imbued heroes bound in forces of darkness, thanks to his grisly nature. Despite being a playable staple in many other RPGs, Necromancer are more likely to be an enemy type than a playable world. In fact, the job only appeared in the Game Boy Advance version of Final Fantasy V. And while they were set to be in a job of Final Fantasy XI's Treasure of Art Ugan expansion, they were deemed inappropriate and reworked into the Puppet Master. Okay, Puppet Master. I don't know much about Final Fantasy XI. If you know anything about Final Fantasy XI's characters, please leave your comments below, because I am really unfamiliar with Final Fantasy XI's job classes. But Puppet Master, okay. But yeah, Necromancer is always a cool job. It's like a Diablo. You can bring back the dead and have them fight for you. Have a whole army of dead to fight along your side. That you don't see in Final Fantasy games too much as a playable class. I mean, there's some, I think, again, back to 14, you can fight some Necromancers like enemies, but as a job itself, you don't really can play as a Necromancer. So yeah, I wonder if that would ever come back as a main job in a Final Fantasy game. That would be interesting. Maybe they can do this dance from Thriller. So Gun Mage, Final Fantasy X-2. Firearms and fantasy together at last. Some combinations seem fated to be, such as the marriage between science fiction and fantasy. It seems preposterous that an archetype that mixes the sharp fit of a gunslinger with mystical mastery of a mage should be part so often. Only Final Fantasy X-2 demonstrated the potential of this potent pairing. Equipping the Gun Mage Dress Spear gives its user the ability to deal extra damage to foes providing they have the right ammunition type, even learn abilities from their prey. They definitely some overlap here with enemy skills copying Blue Mage, but his archetype is still cool enough to warrant expansion. For example, the Gun Mage could work similar to the Black Mage job, but under Bastion Magic or D&D spell slot rules, meaning they can only use magic as long as they still have magical ammo. I mean, 14 has Gunbreaker, it's kind of like Gun Mage. The swords from Final Fantasy VIII, they have to use their ammunition. So it's kind of come back. They just don't call it Gun Mage, they call it Gunbreaker. But yeah, I guess that's the only time I've seen actual like Gun Mage, like more magic, because Gunbreaker in 14 is actually a tank. So yeah, that's the article. It's interesting. Again, I don't think I would agree with a lot of it. Obviously the person does not play 14. They might have done, maybe they went on Google and looked real fast, but I don't think they really have played 14, because like I said, some of these classes like Dark Knight, Scholar, and even Beastmaster. Well, Beastmaster's coming back in 14, so it's gonna get some love. Overall, I guess I have to agree with Geomancer and Chemist, and like even Gun Mage, as you've seen here, was only kind of used like once. A Necromancer too. Hoping maybe they'll bring Necromancer back in a little bit more. That is kind of an unused class, but it'd be cool. Kind of like Diablo-esque, and have an army of dead that beckon at your side. Especially now that 14 is become more like an open world game. Not just MMO, but 16, it's not really turn-based. It's more open world combat. So you could almost have like an army of dead come help fight you or something. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this article? Do you agree with any of his jobs or not? Please leave your comments down below. Love to hear from you. But thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time. Bye.